Hello, everybody. Welcome in. 49ers season officially over. 49ers off season officially here. Today was not my last time at the facility to wrap up this season. We're still waiting on Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to schedule their postseason press conference. More on that in a little bit. But today was locker cleanout day. Players underwent their exit physicals in the morning. There was a team meeting at 11 o'clock. And then afterwards, whenever you're in the locker room during a locker cleanout day, it feels a lot like the last day of school, except that you substitute jerseys and helmets for yearbooks. But guys are going to be going around asking for autographs, exchanging some gifts. There was one cool instance today where Talanoa Hufanga got a jersey from Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa signed his 97 home red jersey. Said, to my Tongan brother, to Talanoa Hufanga, signed Nick Bosa. And then Hufanga folded up the jersey and was going to take it with him to his garage. Talanoa told me he's going to be setting up his garage here in the Bay Area, a lot like Troy Polamalu's garage, because he's been working out with Troy over past off seasons. This year, he's going to be doing the workouts locally, and he's going to be getting the actual workouts from Troy. I think that's a good guy to emulate. Anyway, Hufanga got his Bosa jersey. Bosa and Christian McCaffrey were talking. Kyle Juszczyk swung through for a little bit. Dominic Pooney soaking things up. One of the cool gifts that I saw, this was from Trent Taylor. I don't know if he gave it to both rookie receivers. There's obviously Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall, also Tariq Owens, if you want to go into the practice squad. But at least Jacob Cowing got a gift from Trent Taylor, whom the 49ers re-signed today, by the way. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But Trent Taylor, this is going to look really cool in whatever man cave Jacob Cowing sets up. It was a photo of Cowing's 46-yard catch on the double move against the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember his first big play? He had 2 catches that day. I was talking to Jake about this before the game against the Arizona Cardinals because he was playing back at home in Arizona. He had a few family and friends there. But he had 2 plays. He had the one little tunnel screen against the Kansas City Chiefs, and then he had the 46-yarder. And I remembered that it was 46. For some reason, that stuck in my head. Trent Taylor got a picture blown up and framed of Jacob Cowing making that catch, where everything is in black and white except for Cowing in the middle. That part of the picture still is chromatic. That part of the picture has Jacob Cowing wearing the 49ers red and gold. And apparently you can plug this entire framed photo into the wall and it glows or lights up. I didn't get to see that part because Cowing didn't have a charger to plug it into at his locker. But anyway, these players will gift sometimes their entire team, but their position mates. They'll gift their position mates in these situations. And you'll see Trent Taylor, a veteran in the receiver room, take care of the rookies, Ricky Pearsall, and what I saw, Jacob Cowing. Then you'll just see the simple autographed gifts. There's a portrait of the 49ers defensive line going around where all the defensive linemen sign it. And then every defensive lineman has a copy of a group photo with the guys that he played with this year. The NFL, I mean, it's a very transitory league at this point, right? So many guys that you play with, you only play with for a year, sometimes even shorter than that. But one of the points that a couple of the veterans made, I think that I heard this from George Kittle, maybe from Nick Bosa, is that you do go through enough, and the 49ers went through a ton this season, to develop real lasting friendships with certain guys, even if they've only been on their team for that one season. So I think that even in this tough season for the 49ers, there were good relationships built, and it's just kind of cool to observe that on the final day, the locker cleanout day, which is a lot like the last day of school. These are the 49ers team awards. I'm going to zoom in on this so you could have a better time reading it. The Len Eshmon Award went to George Kittle. That goes to the 49ers de facto team MVP. By the way, these are voted on, the echelon is by 49ers players. So 49ers players named George Kittle the de facto team MVP. Fred Warner, a very deserving recipient of the Bill Walsh Award, which goes to the player who represents professional excellence, that standard of professional excellence established by Bill Walsh. The Bob McKittrick Award, named after the late 49ers offensive line coach, goes to the offensive lineman who best represents the courage, intensity, and sacrifice displayed by Bob McKittrick. That went to Jake Brendel. Remember Jake Brendel dealing with the knee tendonitis over the course of the offseason, I think even into the season, but he managed to start all of the 49ers' 17 games this season. The Hazeltine Ironman Award went to Fred Warner, so he won 2 of these awards. Warner played most of this season on a broken ankle. Good news there is he's not going to require surgery. So he did tough it out, and he successfully did that without worsening his condition to a point where he was going to need surgery. Now the fracture will actually have time to heal. The Thomas Harrion Memorial Award went to the rookie, Malik Mustafa, and another rookie. This exemplifies how special this rookie class has been. The Ed Block Courage Award went to Ricky Pearsall. Obviously, Pearsall went through a whole heck of a lot this year, survived a gunshot wound to the chest. We're going to talk about Ricky Pearsall and a tremendous act of forgiveness a little bit later in the show. The Unity Award went to Curtis Robinson, who is also the 49ers nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. And Community Relations Service Awards went to Spencer Burford, Trent Taylor, Mason Pline, Mandy Shanahan, who is Kyle Shanahan's wife, receiving that award on behalf of the Shanahan family. The offensive line won the Position Group Award for Community Relations Service. And George Kittle won the NFL Salute to Service Award for the 4th time. So speaking of what we talked about today in the locker room, the last day of school vibes, a lot of guys opened up. I mean, it got heavy in there at times. Charvarius Ward really opened up about the PTSD that he has been suffering ever since the death of his 23-month-old daughter, Amani Joy. That happened in late October, and it has taken a tremendous toll on Charvarius Ward, who happens to be a pending free agent. So he's going to have some decisions to make. The 49ers, obviously, with decisions to make. I think that they've been thrilled with their time hosting Charvarius Ward on the roster over the past 3 seasons. Still remember John Lynch back in 2022. I think it was after the game against Carolina, walked up to Charvarius Ward and said, worth every penny. Paying him about $13 million a year. He immediately elevated the profile of a cornerback position that had really struggled in 2021 when the 49ers lost that NFC Championship game to Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr., and the Rams. Ward helped take the 49ers to another level, but there are larger issues at play now, and I'm going to let Charvarius speak for himself here because he did go into detail about the really harrowing aftermath of the loss of his daughter, Amani Joy.
I think they went into this season thinking they wasn't going to be able to afford me based off the way I played last year. You know, if I would have matched that last year, probably would have been one of the highest paid corners in the game. But, I mean, obviously this year didn't go my way or the team's way. So, I mean, we'll just see what the market talking about. If they can afford me, you know, it's a chance I can come back. But, you know, they may not be able to afford me. So, I mean, I just want to go somewhere I want and want to love. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's what I need right now, a lot of love. And I know the Niners love me, you know what I'm saying? But in this business, you know, a lot of time money talks. But I build great relationships here. So, you know, we'll see. I honestly don't know where I'm going to end up at. But it's a possibility that I can come back to.
Could you see a scenario if the market's not where you want to be, where you would do like a 1 year and try to get it so you could get that?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly. You know, I got a lot of trauma in California. You know what I'm saying? I had a lot of great times, but, you know, the worst thing that's ever happened to me, that's probably going to ever happen to me, knock on wood, happened in California. You know what I'm saying? So it can just bring up bad memories. You know what I'm saying? Like every time I get on the plane to come back to California, Santa Clara, San Jose, and so up here, it's just bring up bad memories. You know what I'm saying? I go through that every day. You know what I'm saying? I go home every night by myself because my girl, she don't want to come back to California because of what happened. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard being alone, and she's my strength right now. I need her, and so her not being able to be around me if I'm in California would be tough. But like I said, stuff can change. I can get stronger, and probably get over that. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
Would you rather?
So that's Charvarius Ward saying that his girlfriend Monique doesn't want to be in California anymore due to the scarring memories associated with the loss of their daughter. So she's been back in Dallas, and Charvarius has had to be alone. They just had the birth of a healthy baby boy, Charvarius Jr. It obviously has been the whole thing, even leading up to the recent birth of Charvarius Jr. has just weighed tremendously on Charvarius Ward. And I mean, it's a great reminder that these guys are humans and they go through tragedies just like the rest of people. And I think sometimes it's assumed that they're walking above all that stuff, but as you can see there, that's definitely not the case. I mean, Charvarius said that he's been waking up at night, throwing up, waking up in cold sweats. I mean, real PTSD after the death of his daughter. So I think definitely understandable. It's probably hard for almost anybody watching this show to fully understand the tragedy that he had to go through. So I think that we could take his word for it when he says that it's hard to be in this area where this terrible occurrence happened to his family. So that's where Ward is right now. He didn't rule out a return to the 49ers. It's if the price is right kind of thing, but also it's probably a fluid situation emotionally as well. He did mention in that video that he said, maybe I'll get stronger over time and I'll be able to be alone over the course of this season. But at this time, at this fragile time, it totally makes sense if Charvarius Ward wants to be with Monique and wants to be with his family over the course of these football seasons. So this was heavier stuff than normal at a locker cleanout. Along the note of heavy stuff, Ricky Pearsall today talked the most that he's ever talked about the entire shooting incident at Union Square in San Francisco on August 31st. Obviously, it's been a miraculous bounce back from that. Not only did Ricky Pearsall survive a bullet through the chest, he also played shortly thereafter in the NFL, and he delivered a 141-yard receiving game less than 4 months after being shot in the chest. So he has put together one of the great stories of the season in the NFL. And that's what won Ricky Pearsall the Ed Block Courage Award. But today he took that even a step further and started talking about forgiveness for the guy who shot him. Let's listen to Ricky Pearsall and the perspective that he brings to the table.
Curious, but sometimes you just don't got answers for that. You know what I mean? For me, I don't got answers. I don't know where he's came from, what environment he grew up in. And that goes back for I was just about to talk about the entire opinions about his situation. For me, it's like I don't know how he grew up, so I can't judge him as a man just based off of one action that he made. As as violent as the crime it was, God forbid him doing that to somebody else. I don't ever want that to happen. So whatever has to go into that. But for me, just being able to forgive him. At the end of the day, like I have to be able to forgive him or have that weight off my chest. You know what I mean? And at some point, I do want to talk to the kid and make sure that if I can create an impact on him in any way, I think that would be really big. And I think I'd be definitely open to doing that for sure.
Oh, I know that this wowed a lot of people when I first posted it on the X account this afternoon. I mean, he got shot in the chest. It was an armed robbery attempt in downtown San Francisco, and Ricky Pearsall thought that he was going to die. I mean, we've heard all of his accounts of that story. We've heard the great account of SFPD coming in to help save his life. The fact that less than 4 months later, Ricky Pearsall is talking about forgiveness, he's talking about wanting to actually sit down with the juvenile in question, provide some of that guidance that might have been missing in that upbringing. I think that really shows something about Ricky Pearsall's character and what he's made of. And, I discussed this last night. It ended in storybook fashion this season for Ricky Pearsall. And often we can lose sight of these human stories, but I think it's really, really important that we do focus on them. Ricky Pearsall started the season with this near tragedy that turned into a miracle at Union Square while he was shopping for luggage in downtown San Francisco as a rookie preparing for his first road trip. Unimaginable. We all remember August 31st, and I remember covering it, and I remember just the immediate and then the longer term aftermath. I mean, it was something that we had never dealt before covering the NFL. Fast forward to now, the end of his rookie season. Ricky Pearsall is coming off a game in Arizona where he grew up with 55 plus family and friends in attendance. And he told me a little bit more about how everything went down this weekend. This was really cool. He said that not only were family members in attendance, he said that some of his youth football friends from the Phoenix area were able to attend the game. And the coolest part, Ricky said, was that when he was pulling up into State Farm Stadium on the 49ers buses, he was able to snap a photo of State Farm Stadium. And he was able to send that photo in a group chat to a lot of the dudes that he played flag football, Pop Warner football with growing up. And Ricky had never gotten to play in State Farm Stadium, which is the NFL stadium of that area growing up, even though he started in high school there, played against Brock Purdy in high school there. He had never gotten to play at that stadium. So it had been a dream of his whole life to play in the local NFL stadium. So when he texted all of his childhood buddies the photo from the 49ers team bus rolling up into the stadium, he just accompanied it with a quick message. He said, "Guys, we've come a really long way." And then he saw all those guys inside the stadium. Isn't that cool? And the fact that that was the final game of Ricky Pearsall's season, and the fact that he scored a touchdown in that game to bookend a season where he got shot in the chest and survived to start. I mean, he said it seemed like it was scripted, like a storybook for him to end the rookie campaign this way. And, sometimes you just shrug your shoulders and shake your head and you say, wow. From a football sense, I think the 49ers are in a really, really good place at wide receiver moving on to next year. Let's open up the depth chart. I'm going to go through some of the signings here in a second, but I've opened up a new 2025 depth chart. You could take a look here. It's much emptier than the 2024 one because the 49ers currently only have 55 players under contract. But if we zoom in on that receiver position, Pearsall's coming back, and he's coming back off of 2 games as the 49ers leading receiver. He looks every bit the first-round draft pick that he was, and now we know even a little bit more about Ricky Pearsall's character and personality, and those are obviously 2 very, very good things for a locker room. I mean, this is a guy who, he's a man. He's a man in that 49ers locker room. He talked about forgiveness and just the emotional difficulty of getting to the place where he's at right now is immense, and I think it would impress anybody. So the 49ers have somebody who has both the football ability and the emotional and mental wherewithal to be a really good receiver for a long time in the NFL with Ricky Pearsall. He's coming back next season. Juwan Jennings is still under contract for the 49ers next season. And I mean, we've talked so much about Jennings over the last 24 hours. He didn't deserve to get ejected in that game. It was a bad call. I mean, Juwan Jennings was just too good of a blocker for the officials. He was too good of a blocker, I guess, to reach 1,000 yards receiving because he got ejected before he could reach 1,000 yards receiving. But he had no regrets about what happened on that field because all he did was get under an opponent's skin because he was blocking in old school fashion. Kyle Shanahan had no problem with it, and the 49ers are going to be happy to have Juwan back on the team next year. And guess what he said in the locker room in Arizona the other day when I was talking to him? He said, "I'm just going to have to go for 1,000 yards next year." So you're going to have Juwan going for 1,000 yards. You have Ricky Pearsall, somebody who has the potential to go for 1,000. You hope that you get Brandon Ayuk back at some point. He was recently shooting hoops in the 49ers locker room coming off the ACL tear, so I think that's going decently well. I mean, you got to give him time, though. They were obviously missing the 2023 version of Brandon Ayuk this season. And then Deebo Samuel is still under contract for this football team. I don't know what the 49ers are going to do. And I think that, we talk about hints of moves coming up for San Francisco. Everybody wants to know about the futures of Nick Sorensen and Brian Schneider. We're not even going to have a chance to ask Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch about that or about the future of Deebo Samuel until they actually schedule a press conference. And they haven't done that yet. And it's going to be coming, and it's probably going to be coming at some point late this week. But the fact that it hasn't been scheduled yet lends a lot of credence to my initial theory on Sunday night that it's going to be a very busy week at 49ers HQ. They don't have to make a decision on Deebo Samuel yet. I mean, this is something that can last throughout the next couple months. They obviously will have to make a decision on what they're going to do about the coaching staff, specifically a defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator following the terrible finish in both phases of the game. But when it comes to that receiving room, they have the luxury of really good players under contract and optionality moving forward. And that's before we even get to Jacob Cowing, who as a rookie, I think impressed the 49ers in spurts. I think it finally started to materialize for him from an opportunity standpoint. Late in the season, we saw him get a handful of touches in that game in front of family members as well in Arizona. So the 49ers, I think, will probably benefit from rostering as many of these guys as possible over the course of the offseason and then just seeing how things shake out. They saw the benefit and the necessity of having depth this year. As soon as Ayuk went down, and he's still shaded there in pink because he's still recovering from the ACL and the MCL tear. As soon as Brandon Ayuk went down, this wide receiver room was precariously thin. One of the low points of the season was the loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, where Ayuk went down, Deebo Samuel had pneumonia, Ricky Pearsall was playing his first NFL game. Jawan Jennings was unavailable because he had hurt his hip against the Seattle Seahawks. By the way, Jennings almost had 1,000 yards despite only playing, 15 games this year? He missed a full game there against the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe, and I think he missed the game against the Cowboys as well, so he didn't come back till after the bye week. But anyway, the 49ers were missing all these guys in that game against Kansas City. I found that to be the nadir of the season from an offensive cohesion standpoint, just because they didn't have their normal eligibles available. And it was just another reminder, in case you needed one, that injuries cannot be turned off in NFL the way that they're turned off in Madden. That you have to absolutely stack these position groups if you're going to have a team that's deep enough to go the distance. And this year, the 49ers, even their depth, and I think that they had a decently deep roster entering the season, even their depth wasn't enough to withstand some of the injury damage that the roster took. So they're obviously going to hope for better injury luck next season, but it would not surprise me if all of these receivers were on the roster at the beginning of training camp come July, which is about 7 months away at this point. Let's talk about the players the 49ers signed today, because I have them all listed here. Now, this is a projection. So anybody on the left side here, the gold side, is projected to make the 53-man roster. Everybody on the right side, the red side, I don't have as a 53-man roster projection. You have to earn that. I have them as just a 90-man roster spot right now. But we can talk about who the 49ers re-signed today. The first order of business in any offseason is to take players who are on your practice squad the year prior, and if you want to keep them for the course of the offseason, you re-sign them to what they call a reserve futures contract. So the 49ers brought back the quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, was a rookie this past season. They brought back Tariq Owens, the son of Terrell Owens, wide receiver. They re-signed Drake Nugent, the center, who saw some time on the active roster after getting called up for the practice squad in the final 2 games of the season. They like him as a developmental prospect, and that's going to continue over the course of this offseason. They re-signed Trent Taylor, the veteran receiver. Yes, this Trent Taylor right here. I accidentally moved his cell on the spreadsheet, but they probably like Trent Taylor in the building. Good friends with George Kittle, dependable punt returner, called up at the end of the season, even had a catch against Arizona. Trent is going to be back with the team for the time being in this offseason. Jonathan Garvin, the defensive end, is back. Sebastian Gutierrez, the tackle, re-signed today. Teron Jackson, this is a fresh practice squad addition who the 49ers brought in just a couple weeks ago, maybe just a week ago, has been re-signed for the offseason. Zach Johnson, offensive guard, also recent addition to the 49ers, has been brought back for the offseason. Jalen Mahoney, the safety out of Vanderbilt, also part of the crew for San Francisco. And the tall tight end, the former basketball player, developmental prospect Mason Pline, is back for the offseason. So the 49ers have made these 11 signings. If you look at the depth chart, that's where they slot in. Some of you probably wondering why Elijah Mitchell is on there. Well, it's because his contract should toll since he did not play in the final year of his rookie deal. So I'm still keeping Elijah Mitchell around on the depth chart. Going to ask John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan about him later today. But given these numbers, and I'm still including Javon Hargrave, 49ers have 55 out of 90 roster spots full, which means they have 35 more to fill with a lot of draft picks, including pick number 11, which they ended up netting because they lost the game against the Arizona Cardinals and finished 6-11. They're going to have some good draft capital, and they're going to have, obviously, some spending to do in free agency. They're also going to have to pay their quarterback, Brock Purdy, which was the headlining news from today. Purdy was asked about 9 questions about his contract, and I thought that he handled it all really well. I thought that the theme of Brock Purdy's answers was that he wants this done quickly, which I think should be music to the 49ers' ears. I think that the prolonged Brandon Ayuk contract standoff last season was one of the most damaging parts of the lost 49ers season. I think that the inability to work over the course of training camp with Brandon Ayuk hurt the 49ers offense to begin the year, especially when you coupled that with Christian McCaffrey's Achilles tendonitis. Then when Ayuk did return, he wasn't the same player that he was in 2023. Would he have regained his stride later in the season? We'll never know because he got hurt in week 7. But the bottom line is that any NFL team needs a solid X wide receiver to be a true contender. Juwan Jennings played a solid X for the 49ers after Ayuk went down, but Ayuk was one of the best X receivers in the league in 2023, and the 49ers had a historically efficient offense. It wasn't reasonable to expect them to match that efficiency without that same Brandon Ayuk in 2024, and they'd certainly like that player to return in 2025. Anyway, that was Purdy's favorite weapon in 2023. Why don't we hear from Brock right now on his 49ers contract, the one that his representation will negotiate over the course of this offseason with the 49ers representation. I thought Purdy struck all the right notes when he was talking about wanting to get this done quickly and drama-free, because it was the drama-filled contract negotiation with Brandon Ayuk that really hurt the 49ers last year, and anything similar with Brock Purdy would threaten to sink this team just because quarterback is an even more important position.
Everybody's different, just with the timing of, getting something done and whatnot. For me, I want to obviously get it done. If that's an opportunity to be able to get that done quick, that'd be great. Just so we can get back for phase 1, get after it with the receivers and our team, and just continue to grow, because, man, we all got to grow together. We got to come close and learn and just be the best versions of ourselves as fast as we can. And phase 1 is my mind of OTAs, coming back, getting all the guys back, and let's roll. Let's get after this offseason together. But with that being said, everybody's timing is a little different and stuff. But, for me, at the end of the day, I want to win. I want to win for this organization and everybody here. And I'm not the kind of guy that wants to have any kind of drama associated with anything. I'm here for this organization, for my teammates in the locker room. And, I want to be very professional about it. We play professional football for our living, and I want to keep the main thing, and not get distracted by all the chaos that can go on within it. But I want to just be clean about it and respectable, and get something done and get back to work.
I personally don't think that this should be overly complicated. The market is the market, and Brock Purdy has delivered play that should earn him top of the market money at the quarterback position. Any other thoughts about this? I just categorize as noise. We have to look at the objective data. The objective data can be found through the tape and then through the numerical interpretation of the tape, because people can cherry pick highlights and they can cherry pick lowlights to prove whatever narrative they want. It doesn't prove a narrative. It just tries to force feed a narrative. But if we look at the aggregate performance, if we look at actual results, Brock Purdy has quite the resume so far. QBR, for example, that's ESPN's measure of quarterback play. It's going to include scrambling. It's going to include length of throw. It's going to include down and distance, game situation efficiency. Purdy was the NFL's number 1 ranked quarterback in 2023. Number 1 in QBR. It's a big deal. The top guys end up finished number 1 in QBR. So he was one of the top guys. A lot of people act like Brock Purdy dropped from number 1 to number 20 or number 25 in QBR in 2024. You might be surprised to know that he dropped only down to number 7. So Purdy was still in the top 8 or top 10 of QBR, even despite the fact that so much of the 49ers operation was crumbling around him. I could even read the top 8 of QBR for you this year. But Lamar Jackson was at the very top of the list this season. Josh Allen was number 2. Joe Burrow was number 3 in QBR. Jaden Daniels, great rookie season for the Washington Commanders, was number 4. Jordan Love, number 5 in QBR. Jared Goff, number 6. Purdy was number 7, and Patrick Mahomes was number 8. You don't land in the top 8 of that list by accident. And the other metrics all agree. In fact, in adjusted EPA, Brock Purdy cracked the top 5. He was number 4 on this season. So the advanced metrics across the board, and we're not going to waste our time with raw passing yardage or raw touchdown passes. I mean, those are all stupid stats to look at because they're going to be dependent on the amount of attempts. We're going to look at efficiency, and we're also going to consider down and distance and a quarterback's efficiency versus down and distance over the course of his season. And that's what these more advanced stats are able to do. And the fact that Purdy was still in the top 8, still ahead of Patrick Mahomes in QBR this year, the fact that the EPA per play showed the same thing, and the fact that we watched him, I mean, just look at the tape. We saw his escapability. We saw his poise in the context of the 49ers offense, which had big-time struggles this year, whether it be missing Christian McCaffrey and not having a good backfield outlet, or missing its ex-receiver, Brandon Ayuk, and having to shuffle guys into foreign spots, or struggling at the tight end position beyond George Kittle, or the offensive line, which for the 49ers, I think, was better to start the season than people gave it credit for, but then quickly got worse over the course of the season. It was horrible in that game against Miami. Considering all those things, the fact that Brock Purdy was still able to keep this at number 7 QBR, that indicates a high performance floor. If the guy's got a high performance floor and he's already shown you that his ceiling is literally number 1 in the league, well, the highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now is a guy named Dak Prescott. And Purdy has outperformed Dak Prescott relatively easily. I mean, take a look at this. These are your top paid quarterbacks in the game. This is from Over the Cap. Average per year. Prescott's at the very top at $60 million. Now, I'm going to go off on my tangent here and say that average per year is not going to be what determines this anyway. And that's fair. That is what I'm going to say. But it's a good cursory illustration just to show you the ballpark of where this deal can be. Prescott's at 60. Joe Burrow was awesome this year, but his team didn't make the postseason at 55. Jordan Love, just read him off as the number 5 QBR at 55. Trevor Lawrence, who has nowhere near the resume of Brock Purdy's at $55 million. Tua Tagovailoa, nowhere near the resume of Brock Purdy at $53.1 million. Jared Goff, I mean, the resume is growing, but he has been to a Super Bowl back in the day with the Rams. But Purdy and Goff head-to-head last year in the NFC Championship game with comparable teams as far as talent went. You saw who that went to. That went to Brock Purdy. Justin Herbert has nowhere near the resume of Purdy. Is at $52.5 million. Lamar Jackson, I mean, he has the regular season resume, that's for sure, with the MVP awards. Playoff resume, I'm not so sure about that yet. The point is there's so many guys over 50 million, and Purdy, through only 3 seasons in the NFL, has equal or better resumes than a lot of them. So if Dak Prescott, who's yet to be in an NFC Championship game, can take this very top spot, if that's how the quarterback market is working, well, that's naturally how the quarterback market's going to work for Brock Purdy as well. Now, don't get fooled by all this talk, average per year. Don't get fooled by people saying, oh, he's going to make $62 million per year. Oh, no, he's going to make $54 million per year. No, it will be down in the 40s. At the end of the day, that stuff does not matter, like at all. That's stuff that we can use after a contract is done, once we do know the details underneath the hood, but we can use it after a contract is done to have fun comparing Brock Purdy's number to Dak Prescott's number. But average annual value or average per year, APY in the NFL, is a useless number when you're actually talking about the financial wherewithal of teams and the friendliness or the lack of friendliness of a particular contract. Because most deals, unless it's Deshaun Watson's deal, but most deals have money on them that's not guaranteed. So you can throw on money at the end of a contract just to raise the average per year, even though a team won't necessarily pay the player that money once that year comes along. You'll probably renegotiate before you get to that point. So that's what a lot of fans just don't take into account. They think 60 million per year is locked in at 60 million per year, when in fact, that's all the money included, even the non-guaranteed money. And it's just the average of that money over the course of X amount of years. That's just not a smart way to look at contracts. What you want to look at is the fully guaranteed money and the structure of the deal. And those two things are very tied together. So I'm going to illustrate this again. We'll go back to over the cap. And now, instead of sorting by average per year, I'm going to click on fully guaranteed money. Boom. All of a sudden, Dak Prescott's way down here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 6, 129 million fully guaranteed. The top amount is this obscene amount that was paid to Deshaun Watson, 230 million fully guaranteed. But as you can see, that is not precedent in the league. Joe Burrow has the second highest amount, 146.5 million. Not even close to Deshaun Watson. So I don't know what the Browns were doing. Nobody knows what the Browns were doing. Nobody ever knows what the Browns are doing. But Deshaun Watson is in a world of his own with his 230 million, which is one of the worst contracts in NFL history, whereas the rest of the market is living down in reality. And that's Joe Burrow, 146 million fully guaranteed. Trevor Lawrence at 142. Lamar Jackson at 135. Herbert, 133.7. Dak Prescott at 129 million. Burrow has a greater resume than Purdy's, I would say at this point. I mean, also has lost the Super Bowl, but has been doing it for a longer time. This season, we saw Joe Burrow post the number 3 QBR, really, really good QB. I understand if Purdy doesn't surpass Burrow in fully guaranteed money. But again, you look at a contract like Trevor Lawrence's, and you say Purdy is much more accomplished than Lawrence. He's always ranked more efficiently than Trevor Lawrence, even this season when things were not going well for Brock Purdy around him. And you look at that 142 million and you say, why can't Purdy ask for that amount of fully guaranteed money? I mean, we're just following logic to its natural conclusion here. There are quarterbacks who are not that great who are at the top of the market. So that's just how the market works. So that's what the 49ers, they've long been prepared that this deal is going to be very large. Jed York talked about it at the owners' meetings last March in Orlando. Yeah, last March they're in Orlando. This year they're going to be in West Palm Beach at the Breakers. And I think that the 49ers and Purdy would both like a deal to be done by the time those owners' meetings roll around. Phase 1 of OTAs, and you heard Brock Purdy talking about how important it is for him to get this done quickly. Phase 1 of OTAs is going to be happening in late February. So just like a month and a half from now. So maybe this does get done over the next month. The 49ers have drawn out some of these deals, and Brandon Ayuk drew the receiver deal out for them longer than they did. He was sitting on the contract he ended up signing for 3 weeks, and that caused them to miss all of training camp. But you have other examples like the Nick Bosa contract, which obviously was an elongated negotiation. George Kittle went all the way up to the doorstep of training camp. Most of these contracts aren't resolved until the very end of summer. But there is at least one very prominent contract that the 49ers had given out under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch that was done early. It was done in March. And that was the record-setting deal for Jimmy Garoppolo, who plays quarterback. Quarterback is a different breed of position in that it's so important to a football team. It carries such outsized importance that sometimes you don't want to mess around with it. And I mean, one could make the argument, a very fair argument, that Brock Purdy has already saved Kyle Shanahan's job. And he's probably the biggest ticket to making sure that Kyle Shanahan continues to have a long and fruitful career with the 49ers. I mean, he's come at that exact pivot point. The Trey Lance pick didn't work out. Brock Purdy did. That allowed the 49ers to not only survive the Jimmy Garoppolo injury in 2022, but also go all the way to the Super Bowl in 2023. And now they're thinking about how do we get back to Super Bowls and actually win them over the course of the next several seasons. And I think that every bit of data suggests that Brock Purdy is the right quarterback for that job. You put a competent team around Brock Purdy, and the 49ers are going to be contenders. We saw that in 2022. We saw it in 2023. And I think that we'll see it moving forward in the future if the 49ers can appropriately build this thing around Purdy, which is why I say that the structure of the deal is so important. Now, what the 49ers are going to do with the contract, and this is what they do with all their contracts, is they're going to try to push the cap hits back into the future. If you give a receiver, I could find some of the contract illustrations here. I think this is going to be helpful to those of you who want to understand a little bit more about contract dynamics. So maybe we can look at Brandon Ayuk's contract because that was the most recent big one. They gave one to Deommodore Lenoir too, but the Ayuk contract used more of a staggered bonus structure that the 49ers are sure to use in the future. This is my Brandon Ayuk contract prediction. I'm just going to put this up here. This wasn't the actual Brandon Ayuk contract, but it was my Brandon Ayuk contract prediction. That ended up being actually close to what Ayuk ended up getting. I think I had him at like $29 million per year or something like that. Anyway, I just want to show you the structure. This should help you visualize what the 49ers may have in mind for Brock Purdy. They can push the cap hits back into the future by giving a small base salary early on, and then by taking advantage of the fact that by NFL rule, signing bonus and option bonus money is prorated. So say that you give a guy, what I have here is a $30 million signing bonus. It's prorated over 5 years. So only $6 million a year hits the salary cap. $6 million in 2024, $6 million in 2025, $6 million in 2026, so on and so forth. You can then even double dip in that, or you can triple dip in that by giving out another bonus that doesn't kick in until the following year, and then it staggers further into void years. So the 49ers paid Brandon Ayuk about $30 million a year, but they kept his cap hits down, and this was my projection, but it ended up being in the right ballpark. They kept his cap hits down at like under $10 million for the first year, around $10 million for the second year, and at a level that didn't exceed that until the fourth year. So this is how you structure a contract surfing the wave of the rising salary cap. And the 49ers will undoubtedly do the same thing with Brock Purdy. And with the cap continuing to rise year over year, it's something that the 49ers can get away with, and not just get away with, they can thrive under this formula because you're taking advantage of the salary cap inflation and you're kind of surfing under it. So that's how they're going to be able to fit Brock Purdy. And no, it's not like taking out a loan that you're going to have to pay back with interest. There is zero interest. If the cap is growing every single season, you can afford to put the bigger cap payments into the future interest-free. It makes financial sense for the 49ers. That's about how they've been surfing the wave up until this point. Finally, 49ers intel, Christian McCaffrey had some great thoughts. First time that we heard from Christian McCaffrey since his PCL injury in the snow against Buffalo. Let's have a listen to Christian at his locker today while the 49ers clean the room out.
Tough, I think when you're not out there, it's I don't want to say you don't have a right, but it's just tough because you're not contributing. And so that's one of the most frustrating things about it is you're not helping. And for me, it's just about being a good teammate where I can be and trying to come back as quick as possible. Unfortunately, sometimes those are the only things you can do when you're hurt. But guys never stopped working hard. Guys never stopped coming in here with intent. We had a really tough year, and I've been a part of tough years and I've been a part of good years. I could tell you one thing though, there's only one team happy at the end of the year, and everyone else is really pissed off, whether you lose the Super Bowl or whether you go 6-11 or whatever it is. So I think the mind shift now has to shift quick from this was a tough year, let's learn from the mistakes and get ready for OTAs, because we don't have time to mope on this year. And just like last year, we didn't have time to think about the Super Bowl, and that's easier said than done. But we got to get ready for this next year for the guys that will be here and come back, hungry.
That was Christian McCaffrey pointing out that it doesn't matter where you lose. If you lose in the Super Bowl or if you finish 6-11, you're not going to be happy at the end of the season. And the 49ers have had experience of both within the course of a calendar year. They lost the Super Bowl 58 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now they lose this season at 6-11, not even making the playoffs. Christian had so many interesting things to say. Well, I asked him about, how frustrating was the fact that he got hurt, the season-ending injury, the PCL, had nothing to do with the Achilles. He got hurt on a play that was mere inches away from being a touchdown. Shoestring tackle from Taylor Rapp. And I think that's tortured Christian McCaffrey a good amount since it happened in early December. It goes to show you that the margins in this sport, and especially in this league, are tiny. And I think that play was emblematic of the frustrations of this 49ers season. Obviously, there were a lot of them. I mean, when McCaffrey said that he was just starting to feel like himself again, coming off the Achilles tendonitis, was finding that timing, rediscovering the mojo, and he was about to break free. It looked like he was in the open field for a touchdown run in the snow against Buffalo, and he gets tripped up, and as he gets tripped up, he slams his knee into that hard turf, and he sprains his PCL, season over. The difference between a potentially season-turning touchdown and a season-ending injury for Christian McCaffrey was a shoestring tackle. It's almost cruel, right? Like the thin division between those two polar opposite outcomes. It's almost cruel, but Christian is looking at things now. He's trying to reframe stuff positively because that's what helps an athlete once they have to start training for the next grind in the off season. And he said that he's happy that it happened because he got a taste of what feeling normal again was like against Buffalo. That, for a glimpse, we got 2023 Christian McCaffrey running on the field in front of us. It took him those 3 games, right? He came back against Tampa Bay, and there was the game against the Seattle Seahawks, and then there was the game against the Packers at Lambeau Field. Those 1 win, 2 losses for the 49ers. It took McCaffrey 3 games to really get rolling. By the 4th game against Buffalo, he was himself again. He felt like he was himself again. And I think that's immeasurably important as McCaffrey embarks on the training regimen to get himself ready for 2025. If we go back and we look at the 49ers roster, we see a running back room that actually got really good news today. Isaac Guerendo did not tear his ACL. It's an MCL sprain, so he should be back and ready to go for the offseason program within a few weeks. You have McCaffrey, you have Guerendo at the top of it. Both should be healthy. Both should be ready to go. Christian, by the way, said that he's close to fully healthy now. They said 6 weeks. The injury was in early December. It's been about 5 weeks since then, so it all checks out. McCaffrey should be back and ready to work out fully this month. If not this month, then for phase 1 of OTAs. But between McCaffrey, Guerendo, Elijah Mitchell, we'll see what Elijah's thinking about his future, but his contract should toll since he didn't play last year. And I know that we didn't see Israel Abanikanda, but you already have 4 running backs under contract. 49ers obviously going to add more to that room. I think that you're already in a position where you could be excited about the running back room in 2025. Now, what was weird to me was that Abanikanda wasn't even active in the game against Arizona. So they were really just relying on Patrick Taylor Jr. after Isaac Guerendo went down. That tells me that Abanikanda didn't exactly wow their socks off over the course of the few weeks that he was there after being claimed off of waivers from the Jets, but he still has another year under contract, and the 49ers can continue to evaluate him over this offseason and maybe continue to impart the playbook on him. The big question for me is Jordan Mason. He's going to be a restricted free agent over the course of this offseason, and we saw some really good hard running from Jordan Mason. He wasn't as good coming out of the backfield, not the same kind of rapport with the QB position that the 49ers like to have. So some people have thought that Jordan Mason might be an odd man out for San Francisco in that regard at the running back room. But again, you stack bodies, you stack effective bodies, and I think that Mason's running alone was so impressive. You see some of the yards after contact and some of those advanced numbers were up in the category of Derrick Henry. 49ers have to tender him at some level. Now, maybe somebody swoops in and offers Jordan Mason more, in which case the 49ers would be entitled to a draft pick. If you put the second round tender on him, a second round draft pick. But either way you look at it, Jordan Mason is an asset for this football team, and the 49ers are going to treat him accordingly over the course of this offseason. Either he's running in a very important role for the 49ers next year, but they're not going to let him, or you get something in return for him leaving. They're not going to just let Jordan Mason walk as a restricted free agent for nothing. All right, we played McCaffrey. We've looked at Charvarius Ward, Ricky Pearsall, Brock Purdy. How about a quick 49ers Q&A? Riley says Pearsall will be great. Not that he wasn't this year, but he definitely grow over this offseason. I mean, we saw the growth happen in front of our own eyes. Today, Ricky was talking about how much stronger he has felt over the course of the season. He was coached hard by Leonard Hankerson, 49ers wide receivers coach. Remember Leonard yelling at Ricky Pearsall after the 2 formation penalties in Miami? Ricky today was joking that he's not going to have any more illegal formation penalties. He appreciated the way that Leonard Hankerson coached him. That's the kind of stuff you get out of your system as a rookie, especially if the coaching is good and the rookie's got a good mentality. Those are the mistakes that he makes in his first year, but doesn't make in the future. And I think we already saw marked progress from Ricky Pearsall over the final 2 games. Xavier is, Dave is saying, you think the 49ers get a deal done for Kittle? I do think so. This is crazy to me. A few weeks ago, I said the 49ers' big priority this offseason, one of them is going to be to re-sign George Kittle. Of course, a lot of people said, I'm crazy. What are you talking about? He still has a year under contract. And I said, no, Kittle is a Hall of Fame type of player. He's delivering peak level performance. You get ahead of that a year early. You make sure that he ends his career wearing the 49ers uniform. And lo and behold, what are they talking about now? Contract extension for George Kittle. So you heard it on this channel first. Let's just make sure that the record speaks for that. Here's Xavier. Says, waiting on that presser last of the year. Yeah, guess what? So am I. It's very interesting to me. This is, I talked about the hints in the title. Said, what are the hints that the 49ers are going to do next? Well, I went through the entire roster and we discussed that. But the end of season press conference typically happens on Tuesday. It is not scheduled for tomorrow. As of right now, the 49ers have not scheduled an end of season press conference for tomorrow. I'm opening my email just in case I might have missed something. And I didn't. So nothing yet scheduled for tomorrow. They do the locker clean out on Monday. They do the press conference on Tuesday. Then everybody goes home for the season. 49ers, though, are not going to do that end of season press conference until later this week. Why? Because they haven't finished doing what they need to do internally. What does that mean? Well, I think they have to decide what they're going to do as far as defensive leadership goes. The defense did collapse to end the season. There's no beating around that bush. The defense did collapse over the final 3 games. They gave up over 38 points and 150 yards on the ground per game. That's not good. I know they were eliminated, but you often see the inner workings of the team. Everything is stripped, and you see the ugly inner workings after a team has been eliminated. It's about who are you going to be when the nation isn't necessarily watching, right? You have to behave like a champion, even if you aren't in a situation where you can necessarily win a championship. And the fact that the defense collapsed the way that it did over the final 3 games wasn't a good look for anybody involved. Obviously, Nick Sorensen included. And Nick Bosa alluded to that. He said it was an embarrassment for the 49ers defense over the final 3 games. The special teams has been atrocious for San Francisco all year long. So you talk about Brian Schneider, you talk about how they're going to shuffle things in that phase of the game, because I think it was the difference between the 49ers being a winning team and a losing team this year. All of that has to be taken care of. Kyle Shanahan has to make decisions on how the staff is going to look moving forward, who he's going to retain, who he's not going to retain. And until he has firm answers, he doesn't want to do the end of season press conference. So I'm assuming that there are discussions and there's work happening right now behind the scenes. And our hints of what the 49ers might do lies in the timing of it all. I think that if everything was status quo, stand pat, they would just have the press conference tomorrow. But since there is supposedly some more jostling, I'm just reading in between the tea leaves, since this is not going to be till later in the week, maybe there will be some moves made by the 49ers. It's interesting because the rest of the league has started the firing carousel, right? Gus Bradley fired in Indianapolis. And that's interesting because Gus Bradley was the initial defensive coordinator of the Legion of Boom from 2009 to 2012. And the 49ers run the 4-3 cover 3 defensive scheme that was taken from Pete Carroll, Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn, and the Legion of Boom. So if Kyle Shanahan wants coaching continuity within that system, if he still likes the system, if he doesn't think it's outdated, then somebody like Gus Bradley is available. I think ultimately this is a philosophical question that the 49ers face. There is a school of thought that believes the 49ers and their defense that they're running right now, the 4-3 cover 3, not blitzing a whole lot. I mean, they blitzed less than anybody when it came to bringing 2 or more. There's a school of thought that defensive scheme is outdated. Nick Sorensen brought the lowest 2+ man blitz rate in the league. So bringing 2 or more defenders, so 0 blitzes, that kind of stuff. 1.7% of the time he brought 2 men or more. The rest of the league, meanwhile, is starting to bring pressure very aggressively to defeat some of these pass games, and they're bringing it in disguises, and they're confusing quarterbacks. The 49ers didn't confuse anybody with their blitzes, and they didn't bring a lot of them. So there's a school of thought that this Seattle-style defense that doesn't blitz a lot is just outdated for the modern game, and that the 49ers need to modernize and move forward. There's another school of thought that says, no, you just need premier defensive linemen and linebackers, which the 49ers had a shortage of this year because of all the injuries, the Dre Greenlaw injury being at the top of the list, but Javon Hargrave was there as well. That school of thought says, no, you don't have to blitz a lot, but you better have some good defensive linemen and some good linebackers to hold the fort and to stop the run and to set up the pass rushing opportunities. Obviously, the 49ers did not have that this year. So I thought their defense ended up being left out to dry. But when you don't have that talent, you better have the scheme. And I don't think that Nick Sorensen showed the capability this season of being able to make up for a lack of firepower in the front seven with exotic pressure packages. The numbers in this situation don't lie. They were very inefficient blitzing. So philosophically, Kyle Shanahan's going to have to decide what he wants moving forward. Is he going to want a defense that continues playing along the same principles as the past? Not a lot of blitzing, wide 9-4-3, cover 3. If so, then he's going to stay the course and try to improve the personnel, stay the course with Nick Sorensen. But if he feels that that scheme is outdated or the 49ers won't be able to acquire enough talent to make that scheme roar, he's probably going to be best served by finding a defensive coordinator who's going to be able to scheme up better pressure packages. The one staggering stat that I'll leave you with is that there was only one non-defensive lineman, so linebacker or defensive back, with a sack all season long. One player, one sack outside of the front four for the 49ers, which goes to show you that they were not bringing pressure nearly enough or nearly effectively enough. That was Fred Warner with a sack on a blitz. So I think that's a number that the 49ers need to up next season. All right, this has been 49ers Intel. Thanks for all your good questions. I've gone for an hour. 49ers re-sign 11 players. That works because they have the number 11 draft pick. We talked about some of the futures of their coaching staff, so go ahead and rewind and check this out. And we also did take a look at the roster. While you're here, check out the San Francisco Standard. You could sign up to a membership at the San Francisco Standard, sfstandard.com/memberships. This will be well worth your time. Complimentary first month at Fitness SF. That's kind of cool too. But also these Q&A sessions with me, with Tim Kawakami. We'll be doing a big live San Francisco Standard postseason chat coming up soon, a little bit later this week. You have access to all that good stuff, and you'll have access to much more if you sign up for San Francisco Standard membership. Plus, you support the cause, and I think that I've been covering the team very thoroughly this year, so I'd love if you came along for the ride. Go to sfstandard.com/memberships. Everybody, thank you for watching. This has been another show of 49ers Intel on a heavy clean-out day in the 49ers locker room. Some heavy, heavy material in there, but we covered it as well as possible as the 49ers head off into the offseason.